A sexy woman walks past the boy throwing out the trash. She has blonde hair and talking eyes and a hot body. Hi everyone, welcome to Mystery Explorer. On this channel we cover Hollywood movies, TV shows, and much more. If you like these types of content, please subscribe my channel. So let's get started. Arthur came home and shared the news with his best friend. But as soon as he turned around, he saw the same girl again. Fiona was the new female neighbor who had moved in. What made Arthur even more excited was that Fiona's room did not close the curtains, so Arthur was able to peek into the bedroom and life of his female neighbor. Arthur was able to watch the whole process of changing her clothes. While Arthur was watching with fascination, Fiona suddenly turned around. Arthur was startled. He immediately squatted down. He wanted to get on a train and feel like leaving the place. By the time he stood up again, Fiona was already under his house. Arthur was a good student with excellent academic performance. Nearing graduation, he had never been in love. This is Arthur's one regret. So he agreed to go to the beach with his buddies for the thrill of it. Even when the police car came, they didn't feel afraid and didn't stop. But what just happened was just a picture of his imagination. Arthur had grown up honest. He had never given vent to his rebellion. This day a beautiful female neighbor moved in next door to him. Arthur couldn't resist the urge to spy on her, but his peeping was discovered by Fiona. Fiona walked straight towards his house. Arthur then heard his parents shouting at him to come downstairs. Arthur had no choice but to bravely go downstairs. He was both nervous and scared when he arrived downstairs. His father asked Arthur directly what he had just done. Arthur said he hadn't done anything himself. He thought he was going to get a good scolding from his parents, but his parents just wanted to introduce them to each other. Arthur was surprised. Fiona wasn't here to complain. She's just here to greet Arthur's family as a new neighbor. Fiona is Arthur's next-door neighbor's niece. Arthur's mother is kind enough to show Fiona around the neighborhood. Arthur sat in Fiona's car. He didn't dare to look at her the whole way. Arthur confessed that he had spied on her and apologized to Fiona, but Fiona looked at him with a smile on her face. Arthur saw that Fiona did not react. Arthur knew that Fiona was serious. Fiona said, "You saw my naked body, then I have to see yours too." To be fair, on the spacious road Arthur stripped down to his underwear and stood on the road. Fiona turns on the headlights of her car and focuses on him. He becomes the center of attention. Fiona doesn't give up and asks him to take it all off. Arthur knew he was wrong and reluctantly took off the last of his underwear. Fiona kicked the gas pedal towards him and took Arthur's underwear. Arthur ran naked down the street in pursuit of Fiona. He ran down the street with a tire in his arms. It was a picture-perfect scene. Satisfied, Fiona drove up to Arthur and told him to get in the car. Despite the fact that Arthur was being teased by her. But he fell in love with her beauty. While they were out and about, Fiona drew a sketch of herself and gave it to Arthur. Arthur happily asked if she had a boyfriend. When he found out that Fiona was still single, Arthur was very excited. The relationship between the two grew closer through frequent contact. Arthur, who had been single for 18 years, was now no longer alone. Fiona drove Arthur to and from school every day. His classmates are envious of him. Fiona is bold, lively, and fearless. She and Arthur have completely different personalities. The two of them even climbed over the fence in search of excitement and swim naked in the principal's backyard pool. Then they grabbed their clothes and left before they were caught. Arthur takes Fiona to a friend's house. After she changed into clean clothes, they head straight to the school party. The hot and sexy Fiona instantly catches the eye of all male creatures. Arthur seemed to be a transparent person. He was even chased away by other students. When Arthur saw someone hitting on Fiona, he rushed forward and ignored all the strange looks from the crowd. Arthur kissed Fiona directly. He made a public declaration of their relationship and Fiona responded enthusiastically to him. The others had to leave with good sense. With his love, Arthur's life was on a high. He walked around the campus feeling refreshed. But it didn't last long. Before he finished enjoying the sweetness of love, Arthur was stunned by the sudden appearance of a videotape from his best friend. Jack dragged him into the studio and played a sexy video. The girl on the tape is Fiona. Arthur looked incredulous. He couldn't believe that this normally charming girl would do such a thing. As the images became more and more explicit, Arthur couldn't stand it any longer. He couldn't accept Fiona's profession. He left the studio in a rage. Jack immediately caught up with him and advised him that it was no big deal. Girls are very open these days, but Arthur didn't think so. On his way back, he kept thinking of Fiona's slutty appearance. When he gets home, he sees Fiona at home with his mother looking at his childhood photos. She jokingly said that Arthur was so big when he was a child. Arthur began to imagine again. At this moment he could not accept Fiona anymore, especially when his eyes fell on Fiona. His mind will be presented with all kinds of sexy images. Arthur completely collapsed. His reaction also confused his girlfriend and mother. After they had dinner, Arthur took his best friend's advice to make out with her. Arthur starts groping Fiona in the car and took her to the motel. Fiona was ready in the car. But Arthur was still in the same place, not moving. His unusual behavior makes Fiona guess that perhaps Arthur already knows her profession. Fiona doesn't pretend anymore. She gets dressed and leaves the place. Arthur catches up with her and asks Fiona why she didn't tell him. Fiona explains that she doesn't want to tell him. She likes the way Arthur looks at her. She doesn't want to get upset about it. When she learns that her profession is so shameful in her boyfriend's eyes, Fiona was very disappointed. They had a big fight and parted ways. Without Fiona by his side, Arthur became distracted all day long. He was back to being the person no one wanted to see again. He was even ridiculed by his classmates. This made him feel uncomfortable. Lonely, he finally knocked on Fiona's door. But as soon as he entered the house, he saw a disheveled and strong man. He made Arthur ashamed of himself. Before Arthur could ask who he was, Fiona kicked him out. And the man came out. He turned out to be Steve, Fiona's producer. He came here to take Fiona to Las Vegas for a film convention. Arthur didn't want Fiona to become someone else's girlfriend, so he followed Steve and Fiona to the bar. He smoked a cigarette just like Steve as Fiona was leaving. Steve told Arthur to find a girl about his age to go out with, and not to waste any more time with Fiona. Arthur doesn't stop. Fiona was the one he liked. So there was no way he was going to give her up. Steve didn't say much. He came to Arthur's school to find more actresses until Arthur came out. Steve then stopped talking to the girls. Arthur came to Fiona's house and continued to look for her to get back together, but at this point, Fiona was still upset about Arthur's previous attitude. As long as Arthur can't let go of his professional prejudice against her, they can't be together. But Arthur could not accept her career. He just watched as they drove away. Arthur told his friends what he was depressed about. He regretted his impulsive behavior. At the urging of his two best friends, the three of them also drove straight to Las Vegas. This is a sexy adult film convention going on. The passionate night scene has taught the three young men a lot after they saw the world here. Three people really know that this world is not innocent. This world is not just about love and sex. There are also pipes and whips here. Fiona's giant poster was in the center of the stage. Fiona was wiggling her waist in a sexy way and showing off her style. But then Arthur's arrival made Fiona feel quite uncomfortable. Fiona turns her head and leaves. Arthur chased after her. Fiona does not want to talk to him at that moment. Steve comes up and scolds Arthur for not affecting Fiona's career. Arthur didn't listen to him. Steve was so angry that he pushed him against the wall, and after the warning, he left in a rage. Before Arthur left, he gave Fiona a piece of paper that he didn't want to give up. Fiona opened the paper ball. This is the sketch that Fiona gave him on their first date. Look at the back of Arthur's departure. Fiona's thoughts are also confused. This sexy woman is a porn star. But she decided to give up her successful career for love. Fiona reaches out to Arthur and gives him a kiss. Arthur wants her to be his prom date when he leaves. Fiona readily agreed to do so because Arthur put Fiona back on the right track. But it cost producer Steve a lot of money. Steve stormed into Arthur's classroom in a fit of rage. He didn't care if the teacher was lecturing or not. He just grabbed Arthur out in public and drove his car to the countryside. He wanted Arthur to pay for his huge losses. But Arthur, who was still a student, could not afford to pay that much money. Steve stopped the car and said he could accept the installment payment, but his anger was really hard to quell, so he swung his fist directly at Arthur. Arthur was beaten and bleeding. After venting his anger, Steve calmed down. He felt like he had gone too far. He took out painkillers and asked Arthur to take them. Arthur took one without question, but what he didn't know was that it wasn't a painkiller at all. It was ecstasy. Steve took Arthur to a mansion. He said that if Arthur went to the mansion where his rival lived and stole a trophy that belonged to him, Steve will stop forcing Fiona to make that kind of film. Arthur and Fiona could then live happily together. Arthur happily and readily agreed to do so. Arthur did it for the rest of his life. Even though he knew it was illegal to enter the house, Arthur still chose to sneak into someone's house. However, Steve slipped out and called the police. Arthur had just gotten his things when he saw the owner of the house. He was so scared that he ran away in a panic. The parrot also frantically chased after him, even tearing Arthur. What's worse, outside to meet him, Steve directly drove the car and left him on the road at that moment. The police also came after him. Arthur could only escape from the police by hiding in the bushes. Fortunately, his friends found him in time and rescued him. As a representative of the outstanding students, Arthur had to speak on stage at the school graduation ceremony tonight. Fiona changed into a dress and attended the ceremony with him. Although Arthur was panicked but boldly went on stage at that moment, the pills started to take effect. He was too excited to think. He was acting differently than usual. Arthur simply changed his usual docile image and sang and danced in front of everyone. He even hooked up with the principal, but the drug-induced trance made him unable to read the speech clearly. Arthur simply threw away the speech and improvised. But his genuine emotion won the audience's applause, but he wasn't happy for long. Something else happened. The scholarship that should have belonged to Arthur was taken away by Steve. Arthur learns the truth and confides in Fiona. After the two of them became close, Arthur decided to go off the beaten path. He was going to make a short educational film to get paid. Fiona called her best friends and called them. Arthur's two best friends also actively joined the battle. The film became an overnight success. Arthur became an overnight celebrity. Arthur was also awarded the Outstanding Graduate Award. Steve also put aside his past grudges and Arthur became a partner. Finally, Arthur succeeded in living with Fiona. The two could not help but start to interact intimately in the car and live a happy life.